My name is Clara Hayes, and if you had told me 5 years ago that I'd one day own the company that humiliated me in front of hundreds, I'd have laughed through tears. Back then, I was 28, ambitious, loyal, and painfully naive. I believed hard work could silence politics, that dedication was enough to earn respect. I was wrong. I worked at Stratwell Dynamics, a tech firm in Atlanta, known for sleek products and sharper egos. I'd climbed from junior analyst to project lead in 4 relentless years, sacrificing weekends, sleep, and any trace of balance. My dad used to call me his hurricane, unstoppable but often self-destructive. I didn't mind. I liked storms. They made me feel alive. When my project Ether hit record profits, I thought I'd finally proven myself. But success has a strange way of painting a target on your back. My director, Liam Scott, the kind of man who wore confidence like cologne, thick and suffocating, began to take credit for my work in meetings. At first I stayed quiet. I told myself it didn't matter who got the praise as long as the numbers spoke for themselves. They did, and maybe that's what scared him. A woman outshining the man who'd promised the board he was the reason for our rise. The morning everything cracked, the office was buzzing. We were hosting our quarterly town hall, a polished show where management paraded achievements. I remember standing backstage, clutching a flash drive with my presentation. The screen glowed behind the curtain, showing the title, Ether, From Vision to Victory. My heart thudded with pride and nerves. This was my chance. But when I stepped forward, Liam intercepted me with that perfect plastic smile. "Change of plans, Clara," he whispered. "You'll sit this one out. Corporate wants a unified voice." His unified voice meant his voice. My stomach dropped, but before I could respond, the CEO, Marjorie Dane, was already on stage, mic in hand, calling Liam forward. I stood in the shadows, listening as he walked through my data, my charts, my sleepless nights, calling it our team effort, carefully avoiding my name. My pulse hammered in my ears. Rage flared, then folded into disbelief. When the applause ended, Marjorie smiled at him and said, "And let's thank Clara for her support." Support. Like I'd fetched coffee. The crowd clapped politely. I smiled mechanically, pretending it didn't burn. That evening, Liam called me to his office. The blinds were drawn, the city lights flickering behind him. "You looked upset today," he said, leaning back in his leather chair. "That's not the kind of energy we need." He handed me a performance review, full of vague criticisms, communication issues, team cohesion concerns. It was fiction, and he knew it. "What is this?" I asked, my voice tight. He shrugged. "It's feedback. Don't take it personally." I did. Every word. I walked out shaking, realizing how fragile merit becomes when power decides otherwise. Weeks passed. The atmosphere grew colder. Coworkers avoided eye contact, sensing tension. Then, one Friday morning, an email hit my inbox titled, "Mandatory Attendance, Staff Update." The whole company gathered in the auditorium. Marjorie stood center stage, flanked by HR. I saw Liam beside her, too comfortable. My gut twisted. She started talking about restructuring, budget adjustments, tough decisions. Then she said my name. "Clara Hayes has been a valued member of Stratwell Dynamics," she announced, smiling as though she were reading an award. "But effective immediately, her role has been terminated as part of departmental realignment." My ears rang. The audience murmured. Some gasped. I felt heat crawl up my neck. She gestured for me to join her. I froze. "Clara, would you like to say a few words?" she asked, microphone extended, her tone coated in fake sympathy. I saw cameras, phones recording, a public execution disguised as professionalism. I stepped forward, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Thank you," I said evenly. "It's been enlightening." And I walked off stage. My heels echoed across the silent floor. Outside, the Georgia air was thick and humid. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead I laughed. A low, shaking laugh that felt dangerous. They'd fired me publicly, humiliated me, and in that humiliation, something inside me crystallized into resolve. That night, I went home to my small apartment and wrote until dawn. Plans, budgets, projections, everything I'd learned about Stratwell's weak points. I didn't cry. I calculated. Their arrogance had blinded them to their own cracks, and I knew every one of them. By sunrise, I had a roadmap, not just for survival, but for revenge. I started small. I took a temporary consulting job for a logistics startup across town. It paid modestly, but it gave me freedom and contacts. I networked relentlessly, showing up at tech meetups, industry expos, even dull investor brunches where men with expensive watches underestimated me. I listened, learned, and waited. I watched Stratwell stumble from afar as their new projects missed deadlines. Without Ether, they were bleeding innovation. Liam's presentations grew thinner, his charm weaker. The company was ripe for disruption, and I planned to be the storm that broke them. 2 years in, I launched Halcyon Systems, my own firm, built on cleaner tech and smarter logistics. My first clients were small manufacturers burned by Stratwell's overpricing. I gave them better software, fair contracts, and results that turned heads. Investors noticed. Awards followed. By the 3rd year, Halcyon's valuation hit 8 figures. I'd built what Stratwell could never imagine. A company run on competence, not ego. But success alone wasn't enough. I wanted the full circle. The moment they'd see the woman they'd fired walk back through their doors as the owner. Fate didn't make me wait long. When a recession hit, Stratwell's shares tanked. Rumors of acquisition floated around. I watched quietly, patient, as vultures circled. Then, one autumn evening, 3 years to the month since my firing, I got a call from a venture group I occasionally advised. "We're acquiring Stratwell Dynamics," the partner said. "Would you like to join the consortium?" My lips curved into the slowest, most dangerous smile of my life. "Yes," I said, "but I'll lead the due diligence myself." By December, papers were drafted. The deal went through. Stratwell Dynamics, once my humiliation, was now part of my portfolio. The world wouldn't know yet. Acquisitions like this were layered behind shell entities and holding firms. But I knew, and soon, so would they. The first time I walked back into that building, snow dusted the Atlanta skyline. The receptionist looked up, confused, as I signed the visitor log with a new title, Chief Executive Officer, Halcyon Stratwell Group. I could almost feel the ghosts of that day I was fired whispering through the halls. My heels clicked with the same rhythm, but the sound meant something different now. Power. I headed straight to the top floor. Liam was there, older, thinner, his arrogance dulled but not gone. When he saw me, his expression froze, half disbelief, half dread. "Clara?" he stammered. "What are you—" "Finishing what you started," I said softly. He tried to laugh. "You're joking." I placed the acquisition document on his desk. His eyes scanned the header, then widened. "No," he whispered. "Yes," I said. "You work for me now." He opened his mouth to argue, but I raised a hand. "Save it. I didn't come here to gloat. Just to return what you gave me. A public announcement." And before he could respond, I called Marjorie's assistant and scheduled an all-staff meeting for noon. The same auditorium, the same stage. When noon arrived, the auditorium was packed, just like the day they'd fired me. Familiar faces filled the rows, though some were older, wearier, and far less confident. The same glossy banners hung across the stage. Innovation, integrity, impact. I almost laughed at the irony. I stood behind the curtain again, just as before, but this time the microphone in my hand was mine. Liam sat in the front row, pale and sweating. Marjorie stood near him, trying to look composed, though her eyes darted toward me every few seconds. The board members whispered among themselves, confused. None of them knew yet what was coming. They just knew something big was about to break. The stage manager gave me a nod. I stepped into the light. "Good afternoon," I began, voice calm, deliberate. "Some of you might remember me. My name is Clara Hayes." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I saw recognition flash in dozens of faces. Some looked shocked, others guilty. 3 years ago, I continued, I stood in this very room. I didn't know it then, but that day would change everything. I was asked to speak, only to be told I'd been let go. Publicly. On this very stage. Silence. No one moved. I let the pause stretch, savoring it. I walked out that day humiliated, angry, and broken. But I also walked out with something you couldn't take from me: knowledge. And I used it. I looked toward Liam and Marjorie. Their expressions were tight, brittle. Today I return not as your former employee, but as the new owner of Stratwell Dynamics. The reaction was instant. Gasps, whispers, a few disbelieving laughs. Cameras lifted. Phones started recording, the same way they had when I was fired. Only this time, I was the one controlling the narrative. Behind me, a large screen flickered on, displaying the Halcyon-Stratwell merger logo. The words "Leadership Transition Announcement" appeared in bold letters. I took a step forward. "As of this morning," I said, "Stratwell Dynamics has been fully acquired by the Halcyon Group. Effective immediately, I've assumed the role of Chief Executive Officer." Liam's face drained of color. Marjorie's lips parted slightly, a tremor running through her facade. "Let's talk about integrity," I continued, turning toward the screen. 3 years ago, I believed this company rewarded dedication. Instead, it rewarded politics. The people who built your success were silenced or discarded. That ends today. I could feel the room shift, the employees leaning forward, hungry for change, or perhaps vengeance. "Every decision I make will be transparent. Every lie will come to light." Marjorie finally stood, forcing a brittle smile. "Clara, Ms. Hayes," she began. "Surely this isn't the forum for—" "It's exactly the forum," I interrupted. "This company taught me the value of public announcements." The audience tittered nervously. I turned to her, my tone calm but sharp. "Marjorie Dane, effective immediately. Your position as CEO is terminated. You'll receive your severance per contract. Security will escort you out after this meeting." Her mouth opened, then closed again, as if her mind couldn't catch up to the words. Liam half rose from his seat, stammering, "Clara, please, we can discuss—" "Oh, we'll discuss," I said, "after you clean out your office. Your resignation letter is already on your desk. Feel free to sign it before you leave." The crowd buzzed, half in disbelief, half in awe. I didn't relish their downfall, not really. I just wanted them to feel what I'd felt. The sting of exposure, the helplessness of being stripped of power in front of everyone. But I wasn't done. "The rest of you," I said, sweeping the room with my gaze, "will not be judged by your past association, but by your present performance. Those who worked with integrity have nothing to fear. Those who thrived on manipulation might find the new culture uncomfortable." A murmur spread like electricity. People looked at one another, unsure whether to smile or stay silent. I ended the meeting with a single line: innovation, integrity, impact. Let's finally make those words mean something. I walked off stage to a standing ovation from the lower staff. For the first time in years, I felt the kind of satisfaction that doesn't scream. It hums quietly, steady and complete. After the chaos settled, I went to my new office, the same corner space where Marjorie used to hold her power lunches. I closed the blinds and stood by the window, staring at the skyline. Atlanta looked different from up here. The city buzzed below, alive and electric. My reflection in the glass stared back. A woman who'd turned humiliation into victory. But victory, I realized, wasn't peace, because even after all this, I wasn't free. Success had a way of filling the silence with new kinds of noise. Expectations, envy, loneliness. I'd gotten my revenge, but revenge doesn't tuck you in at night or quiet the echo of old wounds. That evening, as the office emptied, I found myself walking the same hallway where I'd once packed my things into a cardboard box. The janitor, a kind man named Luis who'd always greeted me back then, looked up as I passed. "Miss Hayes?" he said softly, a smile tugging at his face. "You came back." "I did," I said. "This time to stay." He nodded, eyes glinting. "Good. You earned it." His words warmed me more than any corporate title ever could. The next few weeks were a blur of restructuring. I replaced toxic managers, reinstated ethical ones, and introduced profit sharing for employees who'd stayed loyal through the downturn. The board was cautious but cooperative. The numbers backed me. Within months, morale surged, productivity spiked, and investors who'd once doubted me were now calling to collaborate. But not everyone was happy. Liam lingered, trying to cling to relevance. He'd offered flattery, promises, excuses, until the day I caught him trying to leak project data to a competitor. My legal team traced the attempt straight to his private email. When I confronted him, he didn't even deny it. "You can't run this place forever, Clara," he sneered. "You're just one scandal away from losing it all." I leaned forward, voice low. "Then let's make sure it's your scandal, not mine." The next morning, an internal memo announced his immediate termination. It didn't go public, but everyone in the company knew. For me, silence was the loudest revenge. I could have destroyed him completely, filed charges, dragged him through the mud, but I didn't. He wasn't worth my energy anymore. True power isn't shouting, it's choosing when not to. In private moments, though, I wondered if I'd become too much like them. Cold, calculating, alone at the top. There were nights I'd sit in that glass office, city lights flickering against my reflection, and think of my father. He'd died 2 years after I was fired, never getting to see this redemption. He'd always told me, "Win with grace, Clara. Losing's easy. Anyone can do that. Winning without hate, that's the real challenge." I'd won, yes, but was there grace left in me? One Friday evening, while cleaning old Stratwell records, I came across my original performance file, the same one Liam had used to frame me before my firing. "Communication issues," it still read. "Lacks team alignment." I laughed softly, shaking my head. On impulse, I took a pen and scribbled across the page. Resolved. That night, I attended a charity gala hosted by a tech incubator. I'd been invited as a keynote speaker. As I stood backstage, I realized it was the same sense of anticipation I'd felt that first day. The same pounding in my chest, the same fear of being unseen. But this time, I wasn't the one seeking approval. I was the one offering it. When I walked onto the stage, cameras flashing, I began not with business talk, but with truth. 3 years ago, I was fired in front of a crowd, I told them. It broke me, but it also built me. If you've ever been underestimated, know this. People's opinions are temporary. Your growth is permanent. Applause thundered through the room. Somewhere in the crowd, a young woman caught my eye. Early 20s, nervous, clutching a notebook. She smiled at me like she'd just seen proof that survival was possible. And in that smile, I finally felt what revenge had never given me. Peace. The weeks following the gala felt lighter, almost surreal. For the first time since that day in the auditorium, my mornings didn't start with bitterness. I woke before dawn, brewed my coffee, and sat by the window of my penthouse apartment overlooking the city that once terrified me. Atlanta didn't look like a battlefield anymore. It looked like proof. Proof that you could be buried alive and still grow back stronger. Yet even as peace settled in, echoes of the past lingered in unexpected ways. Old employees reached out through LinkedIn messages and emails, some apologizing for staying silent during my firing, others asking for advice. I replied to each one, not because I needed their validation, but because I remembered how lonely silence felt. Every message I sent carried a piece of the woman I'd become, one who'd learned that revenge has an expiration date, but self-respect does not. Then came an invitation I hadn't expected. Marjorie Dane, the woman who'd smiled while firing me, requested a private meeting. My first instinct was to delete the email, but something made me pause. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. I agreed. We met at a quiet restaurant downtown. She arrived early, dressed impeccably as always, but her posture had changed. There was no arrogance now, only fatigue. She greeted me with a hesitant smile. "You look well, Clara," she said softly. "I am," I replied, taking a seat across from her. "You wanted to talk?" She sighed, fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "I owe you an apology." For a moment, I said nothing. I'd imagined this scene 100 times, her begging for forgiveness, me walking away victorious. But reality felt gentler, sadder. "I was under pressure," she continued. "The board wanted results. Liam convinced me that you were a threat to cohesion. I should have known better." I studied her carefully. "You made a choice, Marjorie. You could have stopped it." "I know," she whispered. "And I've paid for it. The industry won't touch me now. My reputation's gone." She looked up, eyes glistening. "You got what you deserved, Clara. More even." "I just wanted to say I'm sorry." I let the silence sit between us. Then slowly I nodded. "Apology accepted," I said. Her eyes widened, surprised. "But don't mistake forgiveness for forgetfulness," I added. "You taught me what power looks like when it's used carelessly. I'll never repeat that mistake." She nodded, tears threatening. "I believe you." When she left, I sat there for a long while, staring at the empty chair. For the first time, I felt no anger, just finality. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They end quietly, when the ghosts stop chasing you. That night, back at my office, I looked through the glass wall at my team. Young, bright, full of ideas. Many of them women, climbing the same steep hill I once did. I realized my real victory wasn't owning Stratwell. It was rewriting what it stood for. Under Halcyon Stratwell's new program, employees now owned shares in the company. Salaries were transparent. Work-from-home flexibility was the norm. No more favoritism, no more staged humiliations. And profits? They were higher than ever. Turns out, respect pays better than fear. One afternoon, I visited the lower floors, something CEOs rarely did. I stopped by the cafeteria. Yes, the same one where whispers about my firing had once spread like wildfire. People looked up as I entered, startled, then smiled. "Ms. Hayes," someone called. "Would you like to sit with us?" I did. We talked about ideas, weekend plans, even bad coffee. No hierarchy, no tension, just people working together. For the first time, the company felt human. Later that week, a journalist from Tech South Weekly came for an interview. She wanted to feature the comeback queen of Atlanta. The label made me laugh, but I agreed. During the interview, she asked, "What was the hardest part, getting fired or coming back?" "Neither," I said. "The hardest part was learning when to stop fighting ghosts. Sometimes you win the battle long before you realize the war's over." Her pen paused mid-note. "And what advice would you give to someone who's just been fired unfairly?" I smiled. "Let them think they buried you. Roots grow best underground." The article went viral within days. Messages poured in. Women from India, Pakistan, Brazil, the US, sharing stories of being overlooked, underestimated, silenced. Each one reminded me why I told my story in the first place. Not for revenge, but for reflection. Still, life has a strange way of testing whether you've truly moved on. A few months later, I got a call from an investment firm planning to launch a massive AI division. Their lead candidate for CTO? Caleb Rivers, one of the executives who'd cheered when I was fired. When the recruiter asked for my input, I hesitated for half a second. Then I said, "Hire him. Everyone deserves a second chance." She sounded surprised. "Even someone who wronged you?" "Especially them," I replied. "That's how you prove they never broke you." That decision earned me more peace than any act of revenge could. Caleb joined, awkward at first but grateful. Months later, he quietly told me he'd respected how I handled it. That, in its own way, was closure. By the end of the fiscal year, Halcyon Stratwell was recognized as one of the most ethical tech firms in the Southeast. Our story was featured on business podcasts, leadership seminars, and even university case studies. Yet whenever I was asked how I managed to turn failure into fuel, my answer was simple. They gave me the stage once. I just decided to change the script. One rainy Friday evening, as the office lights dimmed, I lingered by the same auditorium door where everything had started. The seats were empty now, but I could still hear the echoes, the applause, the laughter, the silence after my name had been called that first time. I walked up the steps, stood center stage, and whispered into the dark, "We're even." Outside, the rain softened into mist. I pulled on my coat and walked into the city lights, my heels splashing through puddles. The air smelled clean, new. The storm was over. Later that night at home, I opened my old notebook, the one filled with plans and numbers from the night I'd been fired. I turned to the last page and wrote, Lesson number 1, never let them see your rage before your rise. Lesson number 2, when they silence you, build your own microphone. Lesson number 3, success is the quietest revenge. I closed the notebook and placed it in a drawer. My story was finished, but others were just beginning. Somewhere out there, another woman was being told she wasn't enough, that her place was smaller, her voice weaker. I hoped she'd find this story one day and realize she didn't have to fight like I did. She just had to rise smarter. As I drifted to sleep, I thought of my father again, his rough hands flipping pancakes, his voice steady. "You're stronger than your storms, Clara." He was right. I'd been the storm, the silence after it, and the rainbow that followed. Morning came, soft and golden. My phone buzzed with a message from Luis, the janitor. "Congrats, boss. Saw the article. Proud of you." I smiled, typed back. "Thank you, Luis. We did it." Because really, I hadn't done it alone. Every person who doubted me had built a piece of the woman who stood here now. Resilient, grounded, and free. The girl who once left this building humiliated was gone. In her place stood someone unstoppable. As the sun rose over the skyline, I looked out my window one last time before heading to work. The city glowed with possibility. There would be new challenges, new rivals, maybe even new betrayals. But I wasn't afraid. I'd already lived through the worst they could do. And I'd rewritten the ending,